Good morning, everyone. I'm Elaine Bennett and I work at Contact in the communications team. I'm the press lead there. So we do some more traditional media. We do have a dedicated social media officer, Jade, um, but very pleased to be joined by Ruth, who's got incredible experience with the social media. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name's Ruth Hobbs. I'm one of the contact associates and I'm also the chair of the Somerset Parent Carer Forum. And as Elaine said, I've been working the forum now for quite a few years. We'll just go with that. And we've done quite a lot of work around improving our social media presence.
Right, should I move the slide along? So Ruth's going to go through the social media side. I'm going to talk about first and then move on to, press and traditional media.
And our aim is that hopefully by the end of this session, you'll feel a bit more confident about how to manage those situations that might pop up on social media, or if you get media inquiries as to how to do that without going into a panic. I can remember the first one we had and thinking, oh my goodness, what do we do here? But hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel a bit more confident. That's our aim. Are you okay to click on for us?
Yes, yeah. So as an overview of today's webinar, it's about building confidence and strengthening voices, your parent carer forum voice, and creating impact. So it's really important to communicate key messages clearly and confidently. And that's kind of whether that's on social media or in interview with a radio or just chatting to a journalist on the telephone. Preparation is key for interviews and kind of preparation in terms of thinking about like questions and anything that might be slightly challenging coming up. But there is opportunity. So the media opportunities, it's an opportunity to raise awareness of your parent carer forum. It's an opportunity to raise awareness of SEND issues and engage families and influence decision makers through social media. So we'll talk about managing online challenges, misinformation and reputational risks, knowing when to respond and when not to engage online as well. And that's very important. And just about how you can increase your visibility. So how you can use social media and traditional media to reach out to parents who aren't involved in your parent carer forum, or let people know in the local community what you're doing, celebrating your successes.
Great. So social media can have really positive sides as well as negative. I think often we get caught up in thinking about the negativity of social media, but there are some real benefits. So thinking about how you can actually raise awareness within your community about some of the things that are happening, services that are available for them, and to be able to share events quickly with your families. You can improve your engagement. We find that a lot of families and forums are probably nod in agreement with this, are just surveyed out in reality, and are fed up with having to do massive big consultations, particularly after the SEND reform one being so big. So actually being able to do more light touch engagement, quick polls, things like that through social media can be really helpful to be able to get that engagement from our families. It also gives us an opportunity to really amplify the voices of families and to share experiences and try to influence change. So just to give you some examples, and I know Rachel from my team I feel a bit of a fraud because she does our social media now. So she started doing work on our social media, and Facebook very helpfully adds up how many people have viewed your posts over the course of the year. So they take all of your posts, how many people looked at each individual post, and then puts them all together. So when we started doing that data, we looked at around 29,000 people a year, which felt a lot. And then this year we've just done our reporting, and we did the figures, and then we checked them again, and then we checked them again, and we checked them for a third time. And it's coming at 1.9 million, which is absolutely phenomenal amount of people that are engaging and looking at posts. So you can very quickly amplify particular things that you want to share. It means that you can provide information really quickly. A lot of people, don't necessarily log into their emails all the time or aren't picking up newsletters or looking on website, but will be looking on social media platforms regularly throughout the day. That's the world that we're currently living in. It also gives an opportunity to talk about some of the good things. Often with Send, it can be quite negative, but actually talk about some of the achievements that the forum has had, the work that we're doing, some of the positive things that are coming available for our families is really important as well. Also provides an opportunity to connect up families. So quite a few forums now have set up closed groups where families can join and they can talk to each other and they can provide each other with support, almost like a virtual coffee morning type thing. And those can be really, really helpful in providing some really practical tips for families, things that sometimes you don't even think about. I can remember we had a parent who has hypermobility, and she was having real problems with her feet after a long day of walking. And another parent said on there, "Oh, I bought these shoes. They were amazing." And a couple of days later, the parent came back and said, "Oh, I've gone and bought myself a pair of these, life-changing, so different. I feel so much better." So it can be those real simple things that actually can be really, really supportive. But bringing that connectivity together is really important because it can feel really isolating being a parent carer. So peer support, really, really important. How to, have that advice exchange. And sometimes just having somebody else that can listen. We know that often you come away from conversations and you might not feel that you've been able to give any advice or change anything, but just having someone that's listening to you can make such a big difference. Are you okay to click on for me,
Yes.
Elaine? Thank you. I feel a bit like Chris Whitty, next slide. So I thought it'd be helpful just to think about some of the top tips for effective social media posts. Keeping it really clear and simple. Try not to focus on lots of things. Try to just focus on one message within your post and make sure they're easy to read and understand. If you do need to share a volume of text, so say, for example, there's a change in a service or something that needs to have a lot of information, often it's easier to put the big information on a website, put a very high level on your social media, and then link to it. Visuals, absolutely key. So if you just put text out, you won't get a very high level of engagement. But as soon as you can add a visual, a photograph, or something that just captures people's attention, that can improve the people and the number of people that are looking at posts. So think about your audience. Who are you aiming the posts at? And actually thinking about wording it in a way that is going to be supportive and helpful for them. So often, we get communications that might come in from our councils and you read it and go, that is not going to make sense to our parents. It's very, what I call local authority speak, very technical. And sometimes it's about changing that into a format that actually parents can engage with and finding things that will be their interest, things that they need. So at this time of year, we often have conversations about placements for September, school transport, all of those types of things that are the things that are really on parents' mind. Give it a couple of weeks and then it will probably flip to how am I going to survive through the summer holidays and what are the activities that I can do? What can I do with my children for 6 weeks to keep them entertained? So thinking about actually having interaction, so using your social media to get feedback, encouraging people to share the content, talking about actually doing polls, things quickly that people can respond to as well. That's really, really helpful. And thinking about how you then respond. So making sure that everything that you're responding back has got a friendly, warm parent tone, but is also very professional and you're thinking positively, responding positively. So think about what you're posting before. So check that everything that you're saying is accurate, check your spelling, check your tone, consider if it actually reflects your forum's values and objectives. Just doing that sense checking. So there's a rule that my husband always uses when he's doing any building work. You measure twice, cut once. Same sort of principle for this. Just get it checked again. And also ask somebody else to check it. Because sometimes you will read something, you give it to somebody else in your forum and they've taken different message to what you're trying to necessarily get across. So just getting a second pair of eyes on it can be quite helpful as well. Are we okay to click on?
Okay, next one.
So the other thing to remember is not everything needs to be responded to. We
Oops.
do have, oh, that's okay. That's fine.
Got ahead of myself.
You don't want to get drawn into an argument. There is a balance with this one. This is quite a challenging one. This is where forums often find that they struggle the most with how do you manage these types of situations. So The first thing is that if there is something going on your social media page that you're not happy about, some of the comments, try to keep the emotion out of it. It's really easy to get emotional, especially as for parent care reformers, we invest a lot of time in the work that we're doing. And if somebody's not happy about something, it can feel quite personal. So it's really important to try and separate yourself. If it is something that you feel you can't, then I would suggest you get somebody else to manage it. So there sometimes are situations that might be a bit too uncomfortable for an individual, but you're a team in the forum, so use somebody else to support that. If it is a personal attack, you can delete it. You don't have to put up with that. If it's factually incorrect, you can correct the error within that. Obviously, think about the tone of how you're going to do that, and how you're going to be able to make sure your communications are very, very clear. If you are going to rebut something that's been said about the forum because it's not accurate, just think about how you're going to do that. So think about how you're going to do your response. And sometimes it's better to take time and not respond quickly, but actually make sure you've had a gap and you've responded really well to whatever it is that's been said. So for example, if someone said something about, you're only funded, you can't be independent because you're funded by the local authority, don't instantly go in. You may want to think about how you're going to respond to that. So you might want to talk about how the forum is independent. You might want to talk about other funding streams that you've got. So just thinking those things through. Sometimes it's actually better not to respond to a question that you think you're going to get an argument to start, and actually leave it a couple of days and then put some proactive communication out that addresses something that's come out. So for example, if there's an argument going on, then you can respond a couple of days later with something saying, this is how we work, this is what a forum is, this is what we do. So just thinking about the best ways of doing that. And sometimes it's quite helpful just to have a quick call with other people in your forum and go, how do we want to manage this? And then the other option is to put out a holding statement and to buy yourself some time until you've got an opportunity to respond. I'm going to hand over to Elaine for the next bit.
I think this is still the social media.
Oh yeah, so sorry, apologies. I'll carry on then. Yeah, so just to emphasize, it is okay to delete comments. Okay. If somebody is on your page and they are being aggressive or they are violent or they are swearing, it is okay to delete comments. We would advise not to delete comments if it's just an disagreement, because then it looks like you've got something to hide. So also remember that once you put something on social media, it can be screenshot. Even if you delete it, it can stay there. We know there's been some incidents over the last few months where posts have been put out from the Department for Education and then have vanished quite quickly. And those have been picked up and people have shared them anyway. So you tend to find they get more traction if that happens. And also just explain. So often if something happens, if you explain why you've made a decision to delete something. So for example, you might just put something very simple about, I've deleted some comments on this thread because they have been aggressive or violent, and we welcome healthy debate and comment, but actually that you're not prepared to put up with abusive language. That's absolutely fine. There is another function that Facebook has, which is worth knowing. Sometimes you will have parents that there's more going on, and that's the reason behind why they are reacting the way that they are. So they may have their own mental health issues, they may be going through a really challenging time, and actually deleting their comments you might think might trigger them and make it harder for them. Obviously, we want to be kind as parent care forums. We know what it's like to be a parent care and how difficult it can be. So there is a function where you can hide comments. Now, if you hide comments, the individual doesn't know that their comment has been hid. They can see it. It's still visible to them. However, nobody else can. So it's just thinking about, is that another option that might be better to use sometimes in some circumstances, and picking the right option depending on the individual and the circumstances. Okay, so a bit more about social media. My advice is be prepared. Make sure you've got clear policies for your staff, for volunteers, people that are representing the Parent Carer Forum, what they can and can't do. If you do have open channels, or if you have a closed group, making sure you've got guidelines about what is acceptable behaviour on your channels, what you will and won't accept. randomly, generally speaking, I can say having good rules in our group, we've probably over the last 10 years only had to delete 5 comments. And the majority of those, I would say 4, were people trying to sell things from their cleaning business. So it is about having good rules and actually just being really clear about what it is and isn't acceptable. Thinking about confidentiality, thinking about data protection. So actually talking to parents in those posts and being really clear, don't name people, don't name your child, don't name children's settings for those reasons. And obviously making sure that you have a really robust process for complaints, any safeguarding concerns or anything that comes up that might be sensitive. If you can, assign roles and responsibilities around your social media. So who is it that's monitoring comments and messages? Who is posting on behalf of the forum? Do you have a lead person for managing difficult situations? And make sure that you have got an admin set up on there so that it's secure and regularly reviewed. It is not unusual to hear of organisations losing access to their own channels because it's been set up on people's personal accounts, and then that person leaves or something happens and that person's not happy, and then you get some interesting posts come out. So it is about making sure you've got that administrative right so that you still retain control of your own social media. It's also helpful if you can have some pre-prepared statements. So there are key things that might come up. So particularly we know that there will be periods where different things are going out perhaps nationally, and some of the comments that might come out that we think actually we know we might be asked this, or we might be asked that. So having some statements in advance that you can just put out that everyone's agreed. So for example, just, you might have one about funding, you might have one around independence, those types of things. And also having a protocol around media inquiries. So we will talk a little bit more about media inquiries later, but we have a process here that if somebody from the media contacts, they will always say, I will need to check with Ruth and I will get back to you. Even if I'm here and they could literally holler across the office, they will do that because that buys us some time to just think. So one of the examples here is about, thank you for raising your concerns. We take this issue seriously. We're reviewing the information provided and we'll provide an update when appropriate. Or it might be, thank you for raising your concerns. We'd welcome a conversation with you. So then you can remove things and take things offline as well and have individual conversations about situations. So those are some of the things that you could use. I think we're going to move on to traditional media, but does anybody have any questions at this point about social media? You can pop them in the chat or hands up. If not, we'll move on and we can come back to questions later. Give it a minute. Okay, shall we move on to...
I'll go on to the traditional media, and then if there's any questions at the end, we can take those or any time. Yes, as I said, I work kind of run the press office at Contact. So, I mean, a lot of the principles are the same as social media. But yes, I mean, each forum, I'm sure you've got kind of a protocol, a kind of process in place. But yeah, it is, I think, obviously, newspapers in particular, I think local newspapers have sadly lost a bit of their influence and readership, although there are some who are bucking the trend. And but radio, local TV still enjoy good, healthy audiences. So it's an opportunity to kind of get your successes out in front of a bigger audience. So yeah, having a media relations policy, it kind of helps you to manage and maintain the reputation of your forum, helps you build relationships with journalists. And that is obviously useful to help you build the forum's profile. And also if a kind of crisis scenario arises, if you've got that already established relationship, that can be helpful. And as we said, it helps to show the value of your forum, let people locally know what you do, and let other parents know how they can get involved. In terms of media, I would say that we say about charities and parent carer forums will fall into this category as well, that you're kind of on the side of the angels. And what I mean by that is that it's unlikely that a journalist will be kind of getting in contact with you to try to trip you up or to try to dig dirt. They will recognise you've got access to a whole host of of local families who all have stories to tell, and you are very valuable to them for that reason. So hopefully there'll be you can kind of build a relationship, a kind of constructive, useful relationship. And if I mean it would be useful to, I mean, if anyone has a relationship with their local newspaper or radio, do pop it in the chat. Be good to know. So in terms of a process, we kind of went into how they do it in Somerset. So yeah, it's just about monitoring incoming calls and emails from the media. So when you get an inquiry, make a note of the name, the contact details, what they want, and a deadline. And like Ruth said, it's just really important, and because you don't need to respond then and there. It's absolutely fine to say, even if they say we need something ASAP, you can say, I need a bit of time. We need to go and speak to so and so, and just buy yourself a bit of time to think through what your response is going to be. So I think Helen's going to put up a little poll. So just to have a think about, what does a journalist want? I know obviously a journalist might come to a parent carer forum about a very specific thing, but what do you think that they're looking for? So there's answer A, B, and C. Reports and meeting minutes, A. B, sound bites, quotes, personal stories, facts. And C, internal forum processes. So we can see that consistently you're all on the on the right page. So well done. That's great. So I'll end the poll there. I'm not sure how many people are here. But yeah, so we've got 100% going up for B, sound bites, quotes, personal stories, and facts. I mean, there may be instances when the journalist is looking for reports and meeting minutes. Should I share? Is that poll being shared? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can see the poll.
Yes,
I think
that's
so.
being shared,
Currently,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. So yeah, they could be, wanting your reports and meeting minutes, but generally are very pressed for time. So if you're able to provide a few facts and a quote, I think that would probably be taken up a lot more. And I think the key thing that a journalist is looking for is the story, that kind of personal stories. So anything with an emotional pull, and obviously our forums are a great source of families, whether that's your steering group members or the other parent members. Just one thing. So sound bites. This is more around broadcast media, so radio and TV, but it also can relate to a quote in a newspaper. A soundbite is a short sentence, probably 10 to 15 words, and it's memorable. It's got a bit of emotion behind it, and it sums up what you're trying to say in a kind of short, snappy, concise sentence. So there's an example there of what isn't a soundbite. Our forum works in co-production with a wide range of local authority departments to improve outcomes for families in the local area. And you might not like this soundbite, but I came up with the soundbite of when parents have a voice, children thrive.
Is it worth me mentioning about my experience with the soundbite that we talked about?
Yes, so please do.
We were asked to do quite an in-depth interview a few years ago with the radio, which was around the publication of our accelerated progress plan for Somerset, which was around exclusions. And I'd done quite a long interview in the morning. I'd been on, the lead member had been on, they spoke to several people. So I'd been on for probably about a good sort of 7 to 10 minutes. And they had cut a sound bite. And my team, because the first one was on at 7:30, my team went, "Oh, I heard you at 8 and 8:30 and 9 and 9:30." I was like, "Oh, okay." And they'd cut the bit where I had said exclusions were the worst that they'd been in the whole time I'd been doing this. And that was the soundbite that had, I mean, it was true. Um, and it was a soundbite that had been used constantly. So just be aware that some of those key statements when you're doing an interview might get pulled out and used as a soundbar.
Yeah, I think that's so true, that it can be slightly frustrating that you've spent such a long time. Like you say, you've got a good 5-10 minutes of recording and then they just literally use a 10-second clip. But often they're pulling out the kind of the bit that they know that the listener is going to remember. Um, so yeah, just to have a think about, I've set that kind of thought a scenario that was actually my colleague found. I'm not sure if she found this, that this was actually a real life example. So if your parent carer forum has been working with the local children's health teams and is given an excellence in co-production award at the National SEND Best Practice event, recognising your work to improve support for children with SEND. So just if anyone is feeling creative to come up with a sound bite for that scenario, I'll pop in one that I came up with. So I said award shows that the best support comes from listening to families. Put that in the chat. If anyone else, real parent so Kelsey, real parent partnership creates real change for children with SEND every day. I like that. Brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, just having a think about, when you're preparing for interview, it's just having a think about just a short, snappy, memorable statement that you can use to sum up what you're trying to say. Next one. Lost my group. Okay, so just a continuation of the media interview. So if you got asked for interview, you should take confidence. I mean, obviously, some people are, very confident about doing media interviews. Others are kind of not so sure. But you should take confidence in the fact that you're being asked for media interview because you are the expert, and the journalist is asking to interview you or someone from your steering group because you have knowledge that they don't have. So, take confidence from that. And journalists want to know the 5 W's, so who, when, where, what, why, and how. If it's a print interview, it'll be a telephone call, or you might see them at a meeting, that kind of thing. If it's broadcast, TV or radio, it could be live or it could be pre-recorded. Don't use jargon, and address the question. So I think, we live in an age where there's a lot of people on radio and TV who evade the question, and it drives listeners and audiences mad. So I think if you don't know the answer, it's fine to say, and that's, you can say, "I'm sorry, I don't know that, but what I can tell you is," and obviously if, same as social media, that if there's something that's said that's not true, you can say that. It's fine to say that's not our understanding. And preparation is key, like we said. So 3 key messages, 2 facts, and an example. And when we talk about an example, I think family stories are, so when I put someone from contact forward for interview, I'll do a media briefing. So that would be just those key messages, and some likely questions and answers. And I always try to put an example in. So for a housing story that we did, and it was around the lack of suitable housing for families and disabled children. There was a story, a family that we'd spoken to who was having to bathe their child in a paddling pool in the living room because they couldn't get up and down the stairs. So that example illustrated what we were trying to say better than, any facts. So, and I'm sure you'll have access to a lot of those stories. So Ruth kindly put together these top tips, which are great because I know Ruth does a lot of media interviews too. So know your messages, decide on your 2 to 3 main points, and keep bringing your answers back to these messages. Preparation, understand the topic, audience, and purpose of the interview, and anticipate likely questions, including difficult ones. Keep answers short and clear, simple language, and stay calm and positive. And listen carefully. Make sure you understand the question before responding, and do address the question. This is a really good tip about bridging back to your message. So if you're asked an unexpected question, acknowledge it and go back to your key messages. So actually using this technique, you are in control. So this example, that's an important issue, but what's most important is, and then you can go back to your message that you prepared, and be honest. If you don't know the answer, say so, and avoid speculation. So stick to the facts and your area of expertise. Don't comment on rumours or confidential matters. And yes, that use of real examples is really important.
I think the other thing
Okay.
Elaine and I talked about is preparing yourself psychologically for doing interviews. So we laugh because a lot of the time interviews tend to be of a breakfast show, so it's quite early in the morning. And if you're at home and you're doing a radio interview, you can wear what you like in reality. But psychologically, I know people that will do interviews in pajamas. I can't do that. I have to be dressed properly so that I've just psychologically prepared myself. I can remember the very first time I did a TV interview and I asked people, what do I need to do? What should I prepare? This is my first one. Helpfully, I got don't wear stripes, don't wear green. And I was like, I was thinking about content, but that's helpful to know. So don't wear stripes because it makes you look bigger on camera, apparently. But it's just those sort of things. Actually, you want to feel as confident as you can yourself going into that and having some things to manage situations. So, I look at this very much like when I do public scrutiny. If somebody asks me a question, so for example, I did public scrutiny recently and I asked a colleague, would you like to answer that? Knowing that they were going to say no, but actually it just gave me a few minutes to think about it. Another thing that you can do is that's a really interesting point, or I'm really glad you brought that up. Just things that give you a few seconds to actually get your thoughts together before you respond to something. So those top tips are quite helpful just to hold in the back of your head if you're doing that. I have done a few TV interviews, and there are people, once you start doing interviews, they then feel comfortable. So we've got particular people in BBC and ITV that will come to us around particular subjects because they're used to working with us. And over time, it does get easier. I'm not going to say the nerves go away because they don't. That would be completely lying. But it does get easier, and you know the types of things you're going to get asked. You know if it's a subject that's particularly controversial, some of the things that they might be asking you. So having some good prepared answers for those situations is really, really key. And to be fair, if I'm doing a radio interview, I have notes in front of me. Or even if I'm doing a one where it's online, because sometimes I've done those where they do them on Teams like this, I will have notes around my screen with main points to remind me of the things that I want to mention.
Thank you. And just a question, because when you've done the radio, have you done a kind of mixture? Because sometimes it can be in the studio, I guess, and then I know that recently they seem to like WhatsApp audio. I think the sound on that is supposed to be kind of studio quality.
Yeah, so they tend to either call you through WhatsApp or through Messenger, either or, because they then got better quality audio. So it will depend on your internet as well, or going into the studio. So yeah, it just depends really on what it is. So I've done ones where we've done live interviews, I've done pre-recorded interviews. We've done ones where they've done like an early morning section where they've spoken to, say, for example, a member of the council about a subject, and then half an hour later they run a session with the forum, and then half an hour later they run a session with some parents in the local area. So it's all those types of things. We've also done one where they came to the office to talk about EHCPs, and we had a group of parents and they sat in and they recorded part of the conversations between parents that were happening, took some sound bites from that, and then did an interview with us and one of the parents as well. So we've done different bits over the years. Those ones are, I don't worry about that much, to be honest. It's ones when it tends to be more controversial. So we had to do one about some local cuts to provision. Those are the ones that I find that I need to be really key about, actually, some of those challenging questions that are going to come out, and getting the real balance between, as a parent care forum, you've got to work with people, but equally we're there to represent parents. So it's getting the balance between making sure that every single thing we say is factual and accurate, and just really going back to those. I think a lot of what we need to focus on is this is the impact it's going to have, not necessarily is it right or wrong to do something, but it's the impact that it's going to have. So for example, sometimes there are no choices. That's the reality of where the budgets are. They have to reduce budgets. That's not great for anybody, but if you can just keep bringing it back to, if this happens, this is going to be the impact on our families. So for example, when we had potential cuts to young carers, if we do this, this is the impact it's going to have on our young people. And just it is bringing people back to the reality of what that decision is going to be.
It's really helpful. So this is just the last section of my bit. So just talking about crisis communications. I mean, we have a plan at Contact. I think it's unlikely for a parent care forum. I mean, the kind of scenarios, I guess, that we sometimes think about are so kind of loss of funding for a service, I guess governance, financial, data breach, an injury at one of our events or something like that. But yeah, crisis communications, again, it's the same principles that you would use in your media relations process, and your social media process is just to be available. I think no comment or not being available can sometimes look like you've got something to hide. And then think about your key messages and implications of those messages, like you said, like Ruth just said about you're having to think about all the different relationships you have as a parent carer forum. So just again, the preparation is really important. You can express regret, but obviously having to consider legal implications, stick to the facts, and also talk about what actions that you're going to take, what you're going to how are you going to make sure that whatever it has happened doesn't happen again. So reassuring the audience. I don't know if any of you have had experience of a crisis, and what that crisis communications and what that would look like for a forum. I mean, if you did want to share that, you could pop it in the chat, or can talk about it in the Q&A, which is coming up. So yeah, and Ruth very helpfully put together this slide, which is really helpful. This model, crisis response models. So stop, don't react immediately. Facts, you verify what is true, get all the facts before you then plan and agree your messages and actions. And then obviously when you if you go public, you've got to communicate clearly, calmly, and consistently. And again, just having that, chatting to forum, your steering group members, about how to deal with these situations. In our crisis comms plan, we have like sign-off processes, all contact details of the people who need to be involved in it, all in one place. And then, yes, so we said about knowing when to take conversations offline. So, and that's sort of in social media circumstances. Yeah, to get in touch with people directly. So I think that covers everything from the, but if anyone has any questions, please do let us know.
I think for forums, sometimes you can get put into situations that you might not have to deal with a crisis that's necessarily from the forum, but other stuff that's going on in your local community. So I talked to Elaine about we had quite a nasty accident that involved one of the schools just over a year ago. And actually, it's about how do you respond to those, because you want to be supportive to your community. You want parents to know that you're there if they need support, but equally you don't want to put out any misinformation. You don't want to raise any additional alarm in the circumstances. So it's just thinking about how you coordinate all of that and make sure that the message that you give out are really, really clear. And that you aren't picking up on any of the speculation. So just, in those types of in the moment situations, it's really important just to verify all the facts before you put anything out. Because for us, we were getting a lot of stuff coming in that wasn't actually accurate. So if you then start sharing that, that can really increase the anxiety within the community. So it's just thinking about how you manage those situations and start to build really key people. So I've got a good key link in the comms department at our local council. So if anything comes up and we need to understand if that is factual, I can literally pick up the phone and say to the person, this is what will be reported. Is this accurate? What can we do to support getting any messages out? How can we help you with making sure that people are getting the most accurate and correct information in those sorts of situations?
There's been a question in the chat. We are at the beginning of using social media and haven't been that successful in using social media. We don't quite understand why some reels get 1,000 views and others don't get any. Is there any beginner's guide to Facebook and Instagram?
There's lots of stuff you can use. So go back and have a look at them. Have a look at what images you're using, because often that is the thing that draws people in. It's not necessarily the text. So it might be worth sort of having a look at one that you've got loads on, and then having a look as well about ones that you haven't got as much. So I know from Rachel, who's on the call, I feel like dragging in poor Rachel. She's done lots of work about ours and linking them to other people. So when you post linking other organizations, for example, if you're running a session and you've got a guest presenter, linking their social media in, because then the reach extends. So just thinking about those types of things can be quite helpful. But just going back and doing a bit of analysis and taking some that have done really well and some that haven't done quite as well. Sometimes there isn't a genuine answer, you don't know why. Sometimes it can be about timings. And one of the things I would say that often people make the mistake of with social media when they first start is flooding it. So what we often see is that people will say, might not put something out for a couple of days, and then they literally put them all out all in one go. Now, sometimes that's just about your own time management and when you're in. So actually using things like planners. So Facebook and Instagram have built-in planners that you can use so you can schedule posts. And we try to aim for maximum of 2 to 3 posts a day with gaps in between. And that helps with the take up of posts.
I think, and also just to add, because yes, similarly, we schedule posts on the contact Facebook page, and the kind of the stories that we think probably will have the biggest traction, or the posts that will have the biggest traction, post around 6-7 o'clock. I think that so you might find, like you were saying about timings, where your forum members who are looking at your page, they might be more active at a particular time. For us, it tends to be the evening. So I would imagine it's similar. I don't know, Ruth, if you have a particular time that's busier.
Yeah, about 10 o'clock at night. In reality, we think that most parents get through the day, get everything done for the next day, and then usually about 10 to 11 they finally sit down for a cup of tea, and that's when they pick up their phones.
They get 10
so
minutes.
That tends to be that tends to be quite a busy time, but evenings definitely seem to be busier for us.
There's a hand up as well, Lynn Lee.
Hiya. I was just gonna add with being totally new to the social media because we're technically a new forum-ish. We've been running almost a year. But we've only just started off with our social media recently. I'm finding that you guys are right with the visuals. In terms of like writing too much text, people don't like that at all. Whereas, when sometimes we get like via your newsletters and like notices and events and things that are going on, and they come in a form of a flyer, people are more interested in seeing, that flyer um with just maybe the link to whatever it is at the event. Or what I like to do also is find for example, because we're in the borough of Greenwich, whenever they post something like an event, a community thing or something like that, just reposting it, so it's maybe keeping it simply simple is sometimes the best way.
Yeah, agreed. And I think using, don't be scared to use things like AI, ChatGPT, Copilot to help you to do that. And
Yeah,
just putting in very simply, this is the text that, might be whatever it is, and saying, make this into a
a visual thing.
Instagram, yeah,
Because
whatever it is that you're,
people like to
yeah.
scroll and things like that. Like I'm one of those people. End of the day, it's been a long day with the kids and things like that, and it's just so much easier instead of just reading a big paragraph of text. It's easier to see, oh, you can see a park, or you can see a picture of a blah blah blah, or whatever it is, or something like I have had some recently. It's like big headliners, just one big headline of what it is, and then it's like for more info, QR code, things like that.
Yeah, I think keeping it light, and then just if
Yes.
people want to read more,
Yeah.
having the information there for them is really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few things come up in chat now. Following on from the first comment about social media and some being successful and some not. The next comment is, I have a colleague here too who might explain it better, but we have inherited what appears to be a very poorly set up and convoluted Facebook page. Has anybody abandoned and set up a new one?
So I suppose my first question is look at how many followers and how many people you've got looking at it, because it might feel like you're not getting a lot of interaction, but if you've got people following it already or other organizations that are linking into it, you'll lose all of that if you set up a fresh one. But you could literally do a relaunch. So you could stay on the same page but relaunch it. And be very clear about the comms, use new branding, think about actually, are you making sure that all of your images that you use are very clear. So for example, if you looked at ours and you saw something orange, you'd know it's connected to our WISE training sessions that we run. If you looked at our main ones, you would have all of our Finding Your Way rebrand. We've just rebranded. So just thinking about actually having that consistent, so that somebody picks something up, they will instantly, you look at contact, you pick up a contact thing, instantly that's contact, by their branding, by their logo, by the colors that they use. So thinking about that, you could do a relaunch without actually having to get rid of your Facebook page completely, but you could relaunch by rebranding.
And we've got, what reels are parent care forms posting? Majority of our information is text and basic images. So I expect it's using reels in that social media world.
Yeah, so I think sometimes some of the things that people go wrong with reels is they take an existing image and they don't adapt it. So thinking about actually, for a reel, it's very like that, a snapshot, isn't it? So if you've got a flyer with lots of information on, they've moved on straight away. So you might have to take it and break it down into chunks with your key messages as you're going through, so that it's actually just picking up the highlight bits. It does take a little while to do that, because you need to break the content down more. But if you just put on a poster, that's where people go wrong, because then you literally get it pop up on your phone. By the time you've got like 2 lines down, it's moved on to the next image. So just think about actually something really short and snappy. And it might be short and snappy with a QR code.
I think there's a couple of hands up, and apologise, I don't know quite who was first.
Should I go first then? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hiya. I'm a trustee from Pecan, and the question, I've just been listening to the social media, how to manage it. We are on Facebook, and we are quite busy on Facebook. The website is really, really slow. We don't get much engagement. We're looking at that. Now, the other bit that we're looking at is LinkedIn, how we can effectively use LinkedIn to engage with more around networking. I don't know if you can share some advice on how to use LinkedIn.
Yep, so I think it's about your audience. Your audience on LinkedIn is going to be quite different to your audience on Facebook. So you're more likely to be getting other organizations. So I think those are the types of things where you share the work that you're doing or opportunities that you've got coming up, because people can start to see about how to collaborate with you. And that's the types of posts that we put. So for example, things like we've just had our 10-year celebration, we've put that on there. Training sessions that we might be delivering, or Elaine mentioned about awards earlier. Those types of things are the things that I tend to put on LinkedIn rather than the stuff that I would be necessarily sharing for parents. There are parents on LinkedIn, obviously, but that platform I find tends to be more for other professionals that we might want to network. And you can put stuff out saying, we're open to opportunities to work on this. So you could put, if you've got particular subjects that are coming out from parents, you could say we've got parents that are interested in learning more about, I don't know, PDA, for example, and then link in with other people. So you can use it that way to network.
Okay.
I would just
my Rachel's in the chat going mad about Canva, so we will mention Canva in a minute.
I'm a fan of Canva too. I was just going to add to the who asked that question then. Because at Contact we have noted in terms of website traffic, we've definitely noticed there's been a dip this year because there's now all these AI generated content at the top of when you Google something. So people are obviously reading that rather than going onto a website. So we do use social media a lot to drive traffic to the website. So mentioned earlier about obviously you don't want to have text heavy posts, so just to have a little, if there's a story that you want to get out there, just have a short couple of sentences or a sentence and then link to your website, and that will drive traffic to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you want to drive traffic at things like putting your newsletter on your website, linking to your newsletter through the website, so sending out instead of sending it out as maybe a PDF in emails, putting that onto your website so people can click on it and it's more interactive. Those types of things can drive traffic through to your website. Also, if you've got any events, putting your bookings through your website, all of those types of things is quite helpful. What we tend to find is, for example, with our WISE sessions that we run for parents, we'll put out the poster and we will direct them to the website. Generally speaking, while they're on the website, they usually see another course that they're quite interested in as well. So it is driving the traffic and just brings up that awareness as well. So that's another thing that you can do, is using all of your bits together to get people to look at other elements of your media.
There's just been a few comments, no real questions. Somebody asked what other media parent care forums use. Obviously there's been some answers there. TikTok, Instagram, and obviously somebody said about blogs on websites are a good driver to traffic to websites.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a few comments about Canva. Canva's really helpful. It helps you break down things, put images and videos together. Much to my not comfortableness, Facebook Live, we use that quite a few times, particularly around events. So if we're running an event, we'll do a Facebook, when I say we, that is the royal we, somebody else does it. Does a Facebook Live of an event, and we'll literally walk people into the building so they know where they're going when they arrive, and we'll walk around the stands to show people what's available. And that seems to work quite well. It usually is generally a conversation about who is doing it. We are from September going back to doing, so we used to, during COVID, we did all of our steering group meetings on Facebook Live. So we used to do a 45-minute session where would be open to any parent carer to attend, where we talked about the work streams that we were on, things that we had coming up. So we're intending to go back to doing that. The next 45 minutes is really boring and operational, so we don't put parents through that bit. But we do find that actually parents quite like that. And ironically, when we stopped doing it, professionals are the ones that are complaining as well, saying it was really helpful because we knew what was going on in the area when you were doing those. We could just watch them and see what work streams you were on and see what was happening that we might not know about. So we are intending to go back to doing those. And it's nice because I think your sort of steering groups, those types of events, or your AGMs don't generally get a huge amount of traffic. You don't generally get a lot of people turn up to those types of things unless you link it with something else. But those are an opportunity because it allows parents to then, ask questions about the work that you've been doing, ask questions about things that are happening in the local area. Even if they can do it afterwards. If they don't do it live when you're doing it, they can put questions on afterwards and say, oh, that's quite interesting about, pins, for example. Can you tell me a bit more? So that works quite well using Facebook Live.
There's a couple of questions come in. What are your top tips for filming high quality, impactful video clips on our smartphones for social media? We're getting braver at filming ourselves at events, and we want to improve our videos as we know families engage with seeing people on screen. And are there any good features we could be using? Captions for accessibility. Thank you.
So I think when you're doing live, so what I would say, one of the things is don't get too hung up on the professionalism of it. For a lot of our families, they just want it to feel real. So actually those live ones where you are walking around the events and showing them the different bits of the event, that's absolutely fine. If you're going to be doing ones that you are going to have on for longer and you want to add captions using things like Canva, putting things through Teams, all of those are things that you can do. The other thing that you can do, which I've now discovered in PowerPoint, which is slightly irritating when you're doing it and can be off-putting, is you can do it in a PowerPoint presentation, record it on something like Teams, and it will actually have like the PowerPoint like this today, but then it will have you or your team image in the corner talking. So it's an actual person, not just a cold. I think that's my big thing, is making it human as possible, because that's the bit that people interact with and relate to.
And it said, could we have a follow-up session for parent care forums with high engagement social media to show us around their pages and groups, which is a very thing. It might be a good thing to do as a follow-up, to see if we can get some forums who are getting some good traction on their Facebook or pages or groups, then whether they'd be willing to show things they do.
Expect most forums are very keen to help other forums, particularly newer forums or forums that are trying to develop. So I don't think that will be an issue. I think probably you'll get more forums that are happy to do it in a non-recorded, closed situation. But I don't think there would be. I think there's something that we could definitely look at doing, is like a session where people could come together and just share practice. We've done that a few times in the past and it's worked quite well.
Yeah, we can certainly look into do it, perhaps like you said, a non-recording one, so it's a bit more free-flowing, drop in, just come and share stuff rather than online training, learning session, maybe.
And I think as well, in reality, a lot of forums it's that thing, isn't it? You don't, we do really well with our social media, but there's still lots that we could be doing, and there's still ways that we can develop, and we're always looking at. So I think it's not a case of saying anybody's got it cracked, because I don't think anybody has, but actually just sharing some of the things that that work, some of the things that you've done that don't work, like I gave that example of being quoted every half an hour. So those, things will not always go 100% according to plan when you're working with the media, and that's fine. You just need to learn from it, and try to minimize any fallout as possible, I suppose, is probably the top tip. So don't get overly stressed and worried about it, would be my thing. I think it's very easy to do that. But I think if we had a learning session where people brought things, that would be really helpful. I did a session with a forum yesterday that I'm working with. We went around and had a look at other parent care forums newsletters that they'd posted on their websites or on their social media to get some ideas, because they're wanting to revamp their newsletter in the area. So I think it is something we naturally do. So I think you'll get people that are willing to do it. We've got another hand up, haven't we? Rachel.
Yeah, I'm from Family Voice Norfolk, and over the years, our social media has become really busy. But I'm very mindful that we share a lot of what's going on out there in the area, not just our own things. And I just wondered if there are other PCFs that do the same thing. The same really with our newsletter. If we know about it and it's relating to SEND, and particularly if it's local, so if it's a Norfolk thing, we share it. Is it best? I mean, it's clearly working because we're getting a lot of engagement, but is it best to kind of limit that a little bit, or is it just really what works for us?
I think it's what works for you. We share a lot of posts from different groups, different activities and things that are going on. And equally, then that builds up a really good relationship. And that's probably why you're doing so well, because you'll probably find they're also sharing your posts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it's working for you and it's working for your families, then stick with it.
Okay, thank you.
I think there is no one size fits all when you're doing social media or anything actually connected to parent care forums. It very much has to be what's right for your parents in your area and what works for you.
Just a few more comments, no real questions. Somebody said we do that, Rachel, but we always add a disclaimer to say we share what we think we like, and it's at your discretion. Also themed our days for posts, so we have a share Sunday, so it's limited to a set day each week. I know some people do feedback Fridays as well.
Thanks everyone, thanks for attending today, and hopefully this has been useful, giving you some tips. It's probably created more questions as well, but come back to us if you've got any questions.
Thanks everyone, pleasure, and thanks to Ruth for her expertise. You're a wealth of knowledge on all these things. It's great to hear.
I think it's just thinking about how we can do it practically, isn't it? And getting your experience of working with the media is really, really helpful actually, and just some of those top tips.
Thanks everyone.
Fantastic.